As a journalist, I have witnessed various incidents. Today, I would like to introduce you to a peculiar case that I have been following. On April 26, 2020, the incident happened in Amagasaki City in Hyogo Prefecture. At 9:00 a.m., a woman was found collapsed and deceased at the entrance of the second floor of the Kinkusu apartment building. The fingers on her right hand were all missing. The police officer who conducted the on-site investigation at that time said, "Despite the old building, there were two chains on the inside of the front door, and there was an alarm system on the wall of the room. It felt somewhat unusual. Additionally, there was a large sum of 34 million yen in the room's safe, which made this case unprecedented. A pension book in the name of Chizuko Tanaka was found in the room. And as it stated, she was born in September 1945. It was estimated that she was 75 years old at the time of death. However, the period during which she paid into the pension was short, and the canning factory where she worked during that time no longer existed. So the pension book did not lead to identifying her. No other personal identification documents such as a national health insurance card, hospital ID, or letters from relatives or a telephone directory were found in the room. There was a landline phone, but there were no records of any calls made in decades. According to the post-mortem report, the death occurred in early April 2020, and the cause of death was subarachnoid hemorrhage. It is believed that one day she suddenly collapsed from the progressing hemorrhage and died at the entrance of her apartment. A further investigation into her identity was carried out, but as she had no resident registration, she could not be identified, and her case was transferred to Amagasaki City as a koryo shibinen, a term used for unidentified deceased persons. Amagasaki City recorded the case in the official gazette to request information about the woman. This was the outline of the case. Upon learning about it, I immediately contacted Amagasaki City, where I was introduced to a lawyer who was managing her estate as the administrator of inherited property. From that lawyer, I was able to hear further details.
It appears that Chizuko Tanaka had a husband named Ruji Tanaka, but like her, he was not registered as a resident. The lease agreement was dated March 8, 1982, with Ruji Tanaka as the tenant, and his workplace was listed as Fuji Chemical Paper Industry, now Fujicopian, in Nishiadagawa Ward, Osaka. However, when the police inquired with the company about Ruji Tanaka's employment history, no record of such an employee could be found. The police also investigated the banks related to Chizuko Tanaka based on her bank book, but there were no identity verification documents in the bank's records. The bank itself could not explain why such documents were missing. At one point, she had an accident at the canning factory where she worked, losing all the fingers on her right hand. According to her medical records from that time, she mentioned having lived in Hiroshima until the age of 23 and having 3 sisters. The police also inquired with Hiroshima Prefecture and Hiroshima City, but they were unable to identify her. Furthermore, it was revealed that she had voluntarily terminated her workers' compensation pension, which was granted due to the labor accident. The amount of the pension was substantial, so it remains unclear why she chose to stop receiving it. She had received dental treatment, and the police tracked down the dentist who treated her. However, this dentist operated as an underground uninsured practitioner, and no records of her treatment were kept. This suggests that she received treatment without insurance, which would have been expensive. Why did she choose this costly method instead of enrolling in national health insurance? Despite having no income after quitting her job and not receiving her pension, a large amount of cash was found in her safe. It is still unknown where that money came from. She lived in that apartment for nearly 40 years, almost as if she was hiding from someone. Perhaps her decision to forego the pension and avoid national health insurance was part of an effort to keep her identity concealed. Some in the police even speculated that Chizuko Tanaka might have been a spy from another country.
Later, I was able to speak with Ms. Miyagi, the landlord of the apartment. Ms. Miyagi said she always came to pay the rent without fail. That was the only time I met her, but she was elegant and quiet. I always remember her with her arms crossed, and I didn't know she was missing fingers on her right hand. She continued, "My late husband handled the lease agreement with Ruji Tanaka, but I never met Ruji Tanaka myself. Since my husband has passed away, I don't know the full story." Ms. Miyagi then took me to the room where Chizuko Tanaka had lived. Inside there was a stuffed toy dog. The toy was a Sandy, first sold in 1982, and it appeared that she had cherished it for nearly 40 years. An album was also left in the room, filled with photographs of a woman with black hair. There were also photos of a man with glasses, but Ms. Miyagi shook her head saying, "I've never seen that man before." There were many photos of the two together suggesting they often went out together. Could this man be Ruji Tanaka? I thanked Ms. Miyagi and left the scene. For some reason I couldn't let go of this case. So I continued to investigate. However, I couldn't find anything beyond what the police had already uncovered. One day, I remembered her belongings. Among them, the only potential clue aside from the documents and photos was the set of 3 personal seals. One was inscribed with the surname Tanaka while the other 2 bore the name Okamune. Upon investigating, I learned that the surname Okamune is very rare in Japan with only about 100 people, most of whom live in Hiroshima. I hypothesized that Chizuko Tanaka's maiden name might have been Okamune, so I traveled to Hiroshima. I went around asking various Okamune family members if they had any missing female relatives, showing them her photo. One man said something that caught my attention. "Now that you mention it, my late mother didn't like to talk about her siblings." He continued, "I'll check the family register at the city hall, just in case." A few days later, the man called me, his voice excited. "Chizuko was my aunt," he said. When he checked the family register, he found that his mother was the eldest of 4 sisters and Chizuko was the second. They were from Hiroshima City, which matched Chizuko's statement in her medical records that she lived in Hiroshima until age 23 and had 3 sisters. When he sent me a photo of the family register, it confirmed her identity. Furthermore, the register indicated she had never been married. However, according to the register, she was born in 1933, not in September 1945 as the pension book stated. September 1945 was when World War II ended in Japan. Could she have changed her birth date for some reason? Thus it was temporarily determined that Chizuko Tanaka was actually Chizuko Okamune from Hiroshima City. When I informed the police in Hyogo Prefecture through the lawyer, the case began to move forward. The police collected DNA samples from the man and his relatives, and after several months, the results confirmed that the body was indeed Chizuko Okamune. The lawyer was pleased that the remaining assets were returned to her family before they were absorbed into the national treasury. Chizuko Okamune's remains, which had almost been left unclaimed, were placed in her family's grave in Hiroshima City. Unfortunately, 2 of her sisters, her eldest sister who was 2 years older, and her youngest sister who was 10 years younger, had already passed away. The third sister, the only surviving one, was suffering from dementia, so it was unlikely she could provide more details. However, I was glad that Chizuko was finally able to return to her family. I took time off and went to pay my respects at her grave. At that time I spoke with Ms. Kawaka, who had been Chizuko's classmate in junior high school. She was such a quiet person. When we walked to school together, she would always wait for me at a distance as if being cautious. Looking at a photo of Chizuko from their junior high days, Ms. Kawaka fondly remembered she had curly hair and was a great singer. Chizuko had been evacuated to the Koya district in Hiroshima during the atomic bombing, and Ms. Kawaka recalled seeing the mushroom cloud from there as well. After she returned to Hiroshima City after junior high, we lost contact with her. We used to wonder what had happened to her. After she was away from her hometown for more than 50 years, I wonder what kind of life she led. Was she happy? I didn't have an answer to her question. Among Chizuko's belongings were 2 photos of children. It was determined that one was her sister's second son, and the other was her younger sister's eldest daughter. Even though she had cut off all ties with the world and lived in isolation, she had never forgotten about her family. Despite this, we still don't know why she left her hometown and lived in hiding for so many years. Do you think she was happy?